Candidate Forum, jointly hosted by the Chinese American Parent Association and Family for Education Improvement. We're recording all sessions and we'll post them on website and social media once it's available. This session is for the State Delegate District 9A. And our distinguished guests today are, let me follow the sequence here, Delegate Trent Kittleman, and Dr. Zhen, Dr. Wu, and Ms. Ziegler. So thanks for joining us in this very important meeting. My name is Feng Ouyang, and I'm a member of the Board of Directors for CAPA. I'm the moderator today for this session. Candidates, you have 2 minutes for open statement to introduce yourself, your main platform, and why you're running. And then I'll ask questions from organization, and each of you would have 2 minutes to answer each question. And unlike the last session, we don't have rebuttal because we have many candidates who want to go through the questions. The candidates will ask in the sequence of your seating, and I will start by the first answer. The first speaker will be taken by rotation, so I will tell you who to start. And the volunteers will tell you the time. It's a warning of 30 seconds before your time, and then the warning when your time is up. And you also have a closing statement for 1 minute, and they will warn you at 15 seconds before the end of time. We will also take some questions from the audience in the end, and each one will have 1 minute to answer those questions. Because of the limit of time, we won't be able to take a lot of questions, so I apologize in the beginning. And audience, for the interest of time, please hold your applause, except for the opening statement. And please silence your cell phone. Okay, with this out of the way, let's start with self-introduction. Delegate Kittleman first.
Thank you very much, and thank you for holding this. I just learned a great deal about your organization, and I'm very impressed. My name is Trent Kittleman. I was elected to the Maryland House of Delegates in 2014. I'm a lawyer by trade. I worked first in a large law firm, then I went to Marriott International. Because of my political interests, they made me a vice president of legislative affairs. That led to my spending 1 year on Capitol Hill working for Senator Fred Thompson, which was quite a delight. He decided not to run for re-election, but that was okay, because at that point, Bob Ehrlich had become the first Republican to become a governor in Maryland for 39 years. He asked me to be Deputy Secretary of Transportation, which I gladly accepted. 2 years later, he sent me over to run the Maryland Transportation Authority because of some issues that had come up. He did not win re-election, so we were all of his appointments were gone, and I had the opportunity to be a consultant for a while with what is probably my most interesting background. I literally had the opportunity to rewrite the rules and regulations of the New York City taxi and limousine service. All of these things I've done have led to a background that is very useful for me and valuable for me as a legislator, which I have loved for 8 years, and hope to do again for another 4 years. My platform, my interest is primarily in education. I think that there are some serious problems in this state, particularly in places like Baltimore City, and that does affect us because we spend a great deal of money, and we would do it if we thought that it was actually going to improve the education in Baltimore City and other places, but it doesn't. We need to have better education, more thoughtful, and we need to involve parents, and that's something that the education bureaucracy absolutely ignores and does not do. Thank you.
I'm Dr. Jane Zhen. Then good afternoon. Thanks for CAPA and the FBI hosting this forum. I'm Dr. Jane Zhen. As well, most of you, I came to the U.S. 22 years ago for my academic achievement and to start a new life. I finished my PhD degree in astrophysics, found a good job, raised two boys, with, Daniel and Ethan, with my beloved husband, do some part-time business, small businesses, and enjoy peaceful life as most Asian Americans. And I believe it is my time to do all I can to make all of our American dreams shine even brighter. Since 2017, I have worked with some couple members and community activists fighting against misguided policies, the culture and ideological warfare brought upon us by the extremists of the Democratic Party is tearing apart our community. We are seeing the damage done to our education, public safety, and economy. I cannot just sit back and do nothing. I'm the first-time candidate, and I'm so grateful for your support and help I have received in this campaign. I'm the first Asian American woman nominee to represent the Republican Party in Maryland, and I'm running for state delegate in District 9A to restore common sense of community, restore balanced governance. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Cha Wu. I'm living in Howard County. I first want to thank COPPA and the VI for this continued civic engagement. I remember since 2015, I've been working with many of you sitting in the audience to really start this campaign. I think the Asian Americans, we should be able to participate and actively participate. And for me, when I moved in Howard County, I began serving Howard Homeowner Association, and then began serving Columbia Association. And eventually in 2018, I think with many of you in the audience support and ran school board and won the election. After 4 years, I believe there's more role I can play to really help Howard County and serve the whole Maryland. So I decided to run for state delegate. I think my platform is really fourfold. First one will be education. How are we able to get more money from the state to help Howard County? Second one, how do we able to manage the APFO to really allow a reasonable and sustainable growth? The third one will be how do we build a better infrastructure and to really protect our environment? The number 4 will be how do we continue to enhance community safety and provide a safe, growing environment for our children, for seniors, for everybody in our country. I'm looking forward to your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you so much to the Chinese American Parents Association for organizing this forum, and to everyone who is here. It really is great to have so many people concerned about and engaged in our community. It is what gives me a lot of hope for the future. My name is Natalie Ziegler. I'm running for state delegate in 9A. I'm a former journalist and small business owner, and I currently own and operate a farm that's been in my family for a long time. I have 2 children. Well, they're not children anymore, but I had 2 children who went to Howard County Public Schools and were redistricted a lot. So I've been through that. But I think some of the experiences that have been the most educational and important to me are some of the volunteer positions that I've had in this community. One of the most important was teaching literacy to adults at South Baltimore Learning Center, and the other was serving as a court-appointed special advocate for children in the foster care system. I really got a chance to see the things that aren't working so well in our society and the places that vulnerable people really need help. And that is one of the things that inspired me to run for office. So I guess expanding economic opportunity is really my main focus, and there are a lot of pieces to that, starting with our education system. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's go to the prepared questions. First question is, please state your legislative priorities if elected. And we'll start with Dr. Zhang.
Personally, as a parent, my highest priority is to restore the excellence in education. But as a state legislative, my first priority is to improve our public safety. We have an old saying, live and work in peace, 安居乐业. Yesterday, I met a police officer during door knocking in Montgomery. He asked me, how will you do? He said, more than 100 police officers left him in the past 1 year. Without the police officers, who can help us? Who can protect our community? Who can protect you, protect our home? How can we improve our public safety? We cannot just waving signs, cry don't kill Asian. After all kinds of tragedies happened, that's not the sufficient way to protect our suffering Asian community and all communities. We need tougher crime bills to combat rising crimes in Maryland. We should have tougher penalties for those repeated offenders, those who have illegal gun possessions, and those who commit violent crimes. We need to bring back the law enforcement officers' Bill of Rights. We need to bring back schools' resource officers. Thank you.
Who will be next? Yeah. Thank you. And I still come back to my priorities. First one is education. During my last 4 years on school board, I realized what happened in the school system. I think the number one issue we keep hearing is the funding shortage, and which leads to many other difficulties. For example, and the hiring problem, right? And every part here right now, the whole country, right, is really experiencing staff shortage. I think we need to pay teachers better, and we need to provide a better working condition, and because education is fundamental to not only to county, but especially to Howard County. Many of us moved to Howard County not because the high price of the property, right? It's really we come to Howard County for better education, and we need a quality staff to support that promise. And so I think the other point I want to make is many people talk about education, but many issues is controlled and managed by Board of Education. A lot of topics other candidates talk about should really come to school board. They probably should run the school board. Right? For state level, one majority function is really you provide the funding. If you're not provide funding, I think the school couldn't function as needed. The second one is really how do we manage the growth? And we have many overcrowded schools, both school overcrowded and they have deferred maintenance. Right now, for Howard County, we have around $500 million deferred maintenance. And we have crowded school, we have failing infrastructure. How do we do it? How do we address them? I think that's a huge concern. And we need a partnership between local, county, and the state government and the state legislature to provide a steady funding source to really address the problem. The other one I would say, really, how do we protect the environment? I think climate change is real. How do we reduce energy consumption, improve energy efficiency? That's something I care about so much. Thank you.
Yes, I agree. My highest priority also is education, but I want to be clear that when I say education, I mean public education. I do not think it is a good idea to take public funds and use it for private schools. As Chow said, we certainly have a funding shortage, and some of that money is going to have to come from the state, obviously. It also is really important to me that we care about the schools in the entire state, including Baltimore City and the Eastern Shore, because Maryland as a state and its education system are going to be attractive or not so attractive to businesses. And one of the things I'm really concerned about doing is bringing bigger businesses with better jobs to the state of Maryland. We've been losing them to Virginia and to other states. I don't think that's something that needs to happen. And I hope I get a chance to go into that more. But education, to me, is the most fundamental thing. I also think it's part of the blueprint. We have got to fund early childhood education. We know now that 0 to 3 is a time of tremendous brain development. And we've got to ensure that children from families who can't provide, story time and conversation, and who work 2 jobs and just don't have the opportunity to give their kids everything they need, those children still need what they need, and we've got to find a way to step in and provide it for them.
I think here is where you will find the difference between the 2 sets of candidates. Let me just tell you what the insights are the parents gleaned during the virtual learning year of COVID about schools. We learned that the teachers' unions care about teachers, not kids, which is actually their job. That the public school system is a 95% monopoly to decide what your children will be allowed to do, including to go to school or not go to school. That wealthier families, many of which live in our area, can make a choice to put their children in a private school or do something else when public schools are doing something that the parent doesn't care for. But that there is no equity for children in lower income families who may not have access to the internet and who don't have the means and the funds to get out of failing schools, of which there are many. That the public schools controlled by the teachers' unions have come to believe that parents don't matter, that parents should stay out of it and let the experts guide it. That something called critical race theory has been infecting schools across the nation. Parents in Howard County learned a first-hand example of a brand of CRT when the administration decided it was going to redistrict 7,000 children primarily on the basis of race. That was not a good idea then. It is not a good idea now. When you base everything on race, the Asian community suffers probably more than any other. I was fascinated with your lawsuit against Harvard because of the fact that they require Asians to have higher scores and do more things, and they grade them low on personality traits to try and justify what they do. It's wrong. It's wrong to base things on race. If there is an issue with race, fine, let's deal with it. But the idea of everything revolving around race is simply wrong.
Okay, thank you. It's good to know that you all care about education a lot. We'll get to that, but first let's get some other questions out of the way. The second question, the crime rates, particularly violent crime rates, are on the rise in Howard County and Maryland. The General Assembly legislation session ended in April 11 with a crime bill to fight crime. In your opinion, what can we do better to fight crimes?
Thank you, that's a great question. I have 2 minutes, right? First of all, I want to say our school system is not a failing school system, right? I don't agree with that assessment. I think the second point, for the crime, actually, I listened to the previous session. I then, because in summer, I had a student intern work with me, look at the crime data in Howard County. So I brought up the statistics for Howard County, right? So in 2017, we have total violent crime, 785. 2018, 655. 2019, 523. 2020, 396. 2021, 419. So the average 5 year is 555.6. So the crime data actually show us the violent crime is going down dramatically, right? I think we should really at the same talking point, right? What's the reality we're facing? The crime rate, violent crime is not increasing. I think that's a discarding point. If we say we have 2 different facts, and I don't know where to start, right? So people may have different feelings or just perception, but the reality from 2017 to 2021, the violent crime data is going down, right? From 700 85 to 419. I think definitely we can do more, right? We support our policemen and make sure they have equipment, they have the funding, and make sure have enough police staff. We were able to hire them. Really, they love the work of the policemen, right? I think that's, and we want a community police as well. They know the community and support the community. They come to the community and then talk to the local resident. And that collaboration between the resident and the police will be a unique angle to protect the safety of our general citizens. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joe. I was actually just talking to Tony McGuffin about this. Not just violent crime, property crime has also gone down. I know there is a perception that it has gone up, but statistically that is in fact not the case. It was higher when Alan Kittleman was county executive. I'm not blaming him for that, but that's just the fact of the matter. And it has gone down every year since. So there are places, however, that are absolutely beset by crime. Parts of Baltimore are absolutely terrifying, and there's no excuse for that. I cannot stand the fact that there are children who have to walk to school knowing that they could get shot, that they could get shot sitting at their kitchen table. There really is no excuse for not protecting people just because they're poor. So we have got to, there are so many initiatives, such as very high percentage of those gun crimes are committed by a very small number of really bad guys. And there are initiatives to find those people and get them off the streets. We also are awash in guns in this country, awash. It is really dangerous for law enforcement. It makes law enforcement much more trigger happy because the reality is they are in fact facing death every day that they go out because everybody has a gun. And to me, sensible gun legislation is another vital aspect of real public safety.
I couldn't agree more. Serious gun legislation that will actually do something is important, and we came close, at least in the Senate, to passing a bill that both sides, both the pro-gun and the anti-gun, agreed on. There was a bill to make theft of a gun a felony. Currently, it's only a misdemeanor. And there was a bill to make establishing that a person using a firearm in the commission of a crime of violence to be a felony, not a misdemeanor. I don't think anybody could disagree with doing that except the House of Representatives, the House of Delegates, who did. The Senate passed it, the House did not. And that goes to the speech I always make when I talk to people. I know people don't like parties. They don't like Republicans, they don't like Democrats. But I can tell you there is a reason that you need to elect Republicans. And that is because no matter how sweet and how nice and how conservative your candidate on the other side sounds, when they get to this House of Delegates, they are not allowed to vote against the leadership, and they end up making all sorts of very, very progressive votes they probably don't even want to. But the leadership has a firm grip on them, and they will be punished. They will find somebody to run against them if they try to challenge the leadership. So we need a two-party system in this state to have supermajority of Democrats. Things don't get passed. Governor Hogan has tried for every year we were down there to pass a bill that was simply keying in on the 5% of criminals who do so much of the violence, and every year they ignore it and they will not pass it. And I don't know why, because it's not that much of an issue other than trying to get people off the street who are doing serious crime. We need to have a different perspective. And we've got to get the environment to understand that whether or not crime is here, it is out there and it is getting worse generically all over.
I just want to say, in my community, something happened in my community. And we attended the Indian festival weeks ago, and we bought some, kind of like showcase, and I posted on the Facebook and to our community WhatsApp group, and our neighbor in fear and scared and said, "Don't show those peas, and it will attract robbery." Okay, in our community, people live in fear. So that's a reality. So national environment is defunding the police, and also to improve police accountability and remove the power of police. They took away and abolished the Bill of Right to protect police officers. And police officers have to hire their own lawyers to defend themselves. No incentive for police to enforce the law, as I mentioned for the first question. In Montgomery County, hundreds of police officers left their position. And that's why the crime cannot be polished, and the General Assembly passed several bills and put a lot of burden on police officers to do their jobs. Remove police protection, bring difficult for them to protect the community. So I think we should, as I mentioned, we need tougher crime bills, and we should have tougher penalties for those repeated offenders, and also agree that for those who have illegal gun possessions and who commit violent crime. Thank you.
All right, thank you. The third question is, Maryland is rated one of the most difficult places to start a business due to high tax, heavy regulation, and a high cost of living, according to many publications like Rich State, Poor States, Forbes, and Wallet Hub. Do you agree, and what can you do to improve our competitive positions? Start with this.
I do agree, and this is actually something that I feel very strongly about. I think we need to attack it on what I would consider the Republican side and also on the Democratic side. In terms of sort of standard Republican philosophy, yes, we probably do have duplicative and onerous regulations that we don't need. We need to at least take a look and make sure that we are getting some legitimate benefit from regulations that make it hard for businesses to come here. Because we do need good paying jobs. We need industry back in Baltimore. We need a way for the skilled workforce that I hope to create with the Blueprint for Maryland, jobs to take. Because what I would like most to do is to expand economic opportunity for everyone from the bottom up. So in that sense, yes. Obviously, we can't, we don't want to be blocking incinerators in Ellicott City and so on. We need to take care of our environment and be careful. But we do need to be more attractive to businesses. The other side of that, though, what I consider the Democratic side, is what we can provide in terms of a top-notch education system, amenities, redeveloped housing in Baltimore, public transit, the things that attract talented young people, and talented young people attract corporations. Thank you.
Yes, this is one area where we do agree very seriously. Having been in Annapolis in the House for 8 years and listened to the discussions over issues, I can tell you that something's got to give. The supermajority does not understand small business at all. And I can give you, we had chairman of the Economic Matters Committee stood up one day after we were talking about minimum wage and increasing it, which I think we just done. And he stands up and he says, if all these little businesses tell me over and over, well, if you raise the minimum wage, we're going to have to leave Maryland. So I say, if they don't like it, let them go. That is not the answer. And they do not understand what happens over and over. Here's another example. We have a problem with building enough schools and renovating, right? A number of years ago, prevailing wage, I don't know if that means when something is prevailing wage, it means you have to pay union wages, which are 20 to 30% higher than if you did not. They apply to schools if the state and county were paying more than 75%. So at that point, Howard County was able to build schools and take care of them because they did not have to use prevailing wage. A few years after that, they increased the percentage to 50%. That made it harder for all the counties. And I think it was last year, this last term certainly, they raised it to, or they lowered it to 25%. That means if a county wants to do it on their own, they have to pay at least 75% and don't get any extra money from the state, any more than 25%, if they want to avoid prevailing wages. That makes it much more difficult for everyone to build schools and do the things we need to do. And there are all sorts of examples like this, including unionizing. Every year they pass 3 or 4 bills unionizing yet another entity, public entity, which costs us all more.
Okay, everybody agree that Maryland is one of the most difficult states to do business in the nation because of all of the high regulations and Maryland has one of the highest taxes in the nation. The next, especially for our small businesses, even without the COVID, small businesses suffer not. The next legislative session should address all the questions and concerns raised by businesses, particularly small businesses. We should have exemption for small businesses which are already operating under difficult situation or startup business at the early stage of operations. If these businesses scale back, everyone suffers, including the employers. Also, we have since we have the highest taxes in the nation, so no matter how to increase the minimum wage, it is hard to attract new employees and retain and grow existing employers because the more the work, the more they have to pay taxes. It's like a socialism, which does not encourage and incentivize hard work. Thank you.
I think everyone will agree that the data point that Maryland is indeed very difficult to start a business, even for small or large. I think we need to create a better environment. And first, over-regulation is a problem. That's what I heard from a lot of small business. And even by applying for permits, it takes so long to get it through. That's a concern. Then, in terms of tax, I think we know that from a lot of survey and comparison with other states, the tax rate is high. And the third point I would say, we need to really be able to provide a quality workforce and such that when business, small or big, when they come to Maryland, they can find the workforce work for them. I think in general, we're doing much better than many other states, but there definitely improvement we can do. And in terms of, and business is very complex, right? So, for example, right now we're trying to attract the FBI headquarters to come to Maryland, right? So that's for big corporations. And then Amazon, right? We lose that big. I think as Maryland as a whole, how do we really look at ourselves and what's missing there? It's just a tax or regulation, or we are missing other part. We need to think about all three aspects to provide that support to attract business to come to Maryland, to provide good jobs, because eventually when our students graduate, they need to find a job, and those jobs are fundamental to the growth of Maryland, and which will provide a tax base to provide service, and everybody deserves to have, and quality service for our residents.
Okay, thank you. Now we finally get into the education, and I have two prepared questions. The first question, the implementation of Blueprint requires funding. Please explain how you plan to provide funding to the local school system to satisfy the funding mandate according to blueprint if elected.
That is an issue that let me answer it in a slightly different way. Yes, we need funding, but there is a misimpression among our counterparts that that's the problem, that that's why we don't have good schools. And I can tell you flat out, money has virtually nothing to do with making schools better in many, many places. Now, in Howard County, Howard County for sure, we could take the money and use it, and we are fortunate we do get a lot of it. We also have harder time convincing people that we need it. But by and large, the Kirwan Commission, and there was a paper that the Howard County Department of Education shared with us on the additional cost that the Kirwan Committee requirements are building into our budget, and we don't have the money to do that. If they were going to make a difference, if the things that they were going to do would actually make a difference in the outcomes, that kids would learn more, then that would be one thing. But they don't. And it's already been said that Kirwan won't take, the benefits from Kirwan won't even be felt for another 10 years. There is one way that you can almost immediately, and with very little funds, help all students, and that is to have the parents have choice. There can be educational savings account. Right now, our charter school law is the worst in the nation. If we could attract good charter schools, there are incredible benefits there. And the value of this is that parents know their children. One of the things that the school found out is that when we had virtual education, that their kids, some kids, actually learn better doing virtually. And I was delighted to hear a member of the school board say we have to take that into account. You know, we may not want to have a one-size-fits-all, and that is exactly my point about choice. There is no right way to have a monopoly that doesn't do the job. It would not hurt. In fact, it normally helps. I could go on forever, but I can't with a red sign, but thank you.
Okay, this is a question I asked for years. Yes, current blueprint, everybody says, has been written in the law because the Democratic supermajority overrode Governor Hogan's veto. We need a bill to improve accountability in our public education system and provide school choice to parents and students in failing schools. Current blueprint raises teachers' compensation level for the exact purpose to provide incentive to attract and keep teachers. However, spending alone will not solve the issues. Accountability must go with spending in order to improve school performance for the benefit of our students. Years ago, when I was a PTAC delegate as a Parents Teacher Association Council, Howard County, I asked the person from Annapolis to advocate the blueprint, how to fund it. He replied that taxing those casino businesses can get a lot of money. I cannot tell. They are advocating the education of casinos. I have to say it's a kind of way to ruling generations in the lane of education. I asked another person, Ms. Kelly Schultz, former Secretary of Maryland Department of Commerce, and she said the state cannot afford it and the local government cannot afford it. Part of money from Maryland state and another percentage should go from local government and force county to increase the tax, especially rob from rich or wealthy counties such as Howard County to poor counties. That's what kind of a solution I heard. Thank you.
So first, I'm not supporting public money going to private school. I think that's the wrong way to really support our education system. And we have a lot of child application in our school board. All board members really didn't support the charter school application. Just see that right from Howard County. No board member supported the previous charter school application twice. I think both because the reasons the charter school application, which is not good, and we have concerns. if our school system money goes to private school, what's the accountability there? Because they have private board and they have no really insurance if they fail. What's the consequence for our student? I think another point I want to mention is really, it's easy to say no, or because other majority doing something. It's a different story, you find a solution. I think in general, that's most difficult. But I can always say no, or not provide a solution, or I can work with others to find a solution. I think if I'm in the state legislature, I definitely can work with across the aisle, either from Democrats, Republicans, find a solution to really fund the blueprint. When I was school board member last year, the last several years, right? Our school system is the first school system tells our state legislature that we're not able to fund the blueprint at the timeline to propose. Then we work with them. So, okay, they delayed the implementation. And we will continue to work with them. And maybe with me, really in the process, to find a solution to support our school system. Because we need that money to pay our teachers better and to attract more teaching votes, to really motivate our young generation go to teaching profession. If we don't have students which are motivated or interested in teaching, what's the future for their students? I think that's the point we need to ask ourselves. How do we support our education? Thank you.
Thank you. I've always liked that bumper sticker that says, if you think education is expensive, try ignorance. When I was volunteering at South Baltimore Learning Center, I met so many students whom we completely failed and who, as adults, were essentially incapable of earning a living. If you're functionally illiterate, there is almost nothing you can do that is legal to earn money. We spend an enormous amount of money as a society policing and shoring up and the public safety net and everything else. Those students, we have absolutely failed, not to mention the human cost of who could they have been, what could they have done had we managed to educate them. So we have to find a way to fund Kirwan. Massachusetts, which is #1 in the country in terms of schools, spends significantly more money per pupil on their education system. We need to be able to do that too. So our tax code is surprisingly regressive for a state like Maryland. We need to take a look at that. We need to bring big businesses. We need to shore up our small businesses. We need business tax revenue in this state. Because there are a lot of things that we could do that would set Maryland up for the future. And this becomes a virtuous cycle. When you have an educated, talented workforce, you attract businesses to yourself without having to give them huge tax breaks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The last prepared question. Proposition 16 in California and Initiative 1000 in Washington State attempts to make race consideration into law in public college admission and government jobs. Would you support at the state level to take race and other demographic data as a factor when evaluating college application or job applications? Just start with Dr. Sen, right?
I don't support educational race and demographic data as a factor. And I think education is important, I agree, everyone, and it's never too much to emphasize the importance of the education. And because as I said many times, our next generation is the future of our nation. So the first item in my platform is to restore the excellence in education. So I don't agree to keep race and the demographic data as a factor. Yes, I think we should have the equal opportunity for every children. Yeah, and also we should stop those socio-economic based redistricting, and we should based on the capacity. And we need to focus on education and give everyone the equal opportunity for those high education. Yeah.
Definitely, I'm not supporting that. I think there's one saying, right? The way to stop racial discrimination is stop racial discrimination, right? Anything we talk about race, it can be very complicated, and the people have different feelings. But the Asian Americans, right? Had been discriminated over the last several hundred years in this land, right? I think everybody should have that baseline. But the Asian Americans, I can feel that, and personally, I can feel a lot of policies or even with some interactions. I really want people to look at me, not because I'm an Asian American. I'm a good citizen. I'm an engaged person. I'm a person who deserves respect, right? And I think that's the way that I look at others. It's not the race, but the character I would look at that. And when we have conversations with other people, we're really not focused on the race, we're focused on the conversation, the content, and the character. And that's the way I think we build that mutual understanding and say, okay, what's the problem we're facing? How do we address that? When we come back and talk about race, I think in general, it's very complicated. Sometimes which leads more complicated consequence, which sometimes you have no solution at all. And for me, I always look at the problem like holistically and say, okay, how do we reach a consensus, build a common ground, and try to find a solution everybody can accept. Maybe the solution is sequentially, maybe very small, but eventually I want to look at the solution can lead to substantial change, which can better improve the whole society. Thank you.
This is a very tough question, and I really wish so much that there was no such, that we didn't see race. It's a social construct that I would love to get rid of. It's not even a real thing. So, but I must say, over my lifetime, I've seen huge increases in African Americans in particular, taking jobs, doing things, getting money, building communities that I know they would not have been able to do without affirmative action. It just unfortunately was necessary because of Jim Crow policies that really created second-class citizens. And so in order to break that chain, we had to do something that, yes, you could call racist in order, well, certainly race-based. I don't think, racist is a pejorative term. I mean, we've seen the same thing in India. They've created positions for the Dalit class that, without them, how do you go from untouchable to being able to go to medical school? It just is a leap that is too much unless you somehow find a way to help that first group of people get there. So what I would prefer is to find ways to undo the systemic racist policies that we retain in our society so that we no longer need affirmative action. But I don't know if we're there yet, and I don't really anticipate getting there in my lifetime, to be honest.
I do not support it because it is unconstitutional, reason number one. And reason number two, what is happening now is we are creating an entire class of victims. And this is not good either for whites or blacks or browns or Asians or anybody. Undercutting the thing that is most valuable about America, and it makes me furious to, when people say that we have to do this, there is an underlying belief that the people they need to help aren't capable of doing it without their help. And I agree with Natalie that there was a time, and it was good to give people, and to get out of that Jim Crow era. But it seems to me that the goal should be to get rid of that sort of racial bias as soon as possible, so that we can become one nation. I have a minute or two left. I wanted to address a couple things that were said earlier regarding education. Number one, Dr. Wu, you said we can say this and that and the other, but we don't have a solution. Yes, I do. I gave you the solution. The solution is to empower parents and to allow better charter schools and educational savings accounts and those sorts of things, which cost the taxpayer virtually nothing. That's the right way to go. That we need to do that, if only to give it a try, because the kids are suffering. In the city and in low-income areas, the fact that they are not being educated is exactly the basic reason for so many of the problems that follow. You're absolutely right about that. Something has to give. The other thing that I wanted to say is, when I say Kirwan is something that isn't going to work, that's because we already did it 10, 12 years before Thornton. Before Kirwan, we had Thornton, a $43 million or how many dollars we put into the city and other places to improve education. It did nothing. The educational system did not improve one iota after all of that money was infused. So again, we have to try something different. And finally, I have a question that I asked to all of my liberal friends, and I never even, I guess I can't tell you right now, but I will at some point.
Maybe you can walk into your closing statement.
Okay, I'll do that.
Okay, now let's go to the audience questions from the audience. So those are like 1 minute per person to answer. First question: public transportation is essential for employment. How do we increase it in Howard County? So start from Dr. Chen.
Increase transportation, the question is.
I'll read it again. Public transportation is essential for employment. How do we increase it in Howard County?
I think it's kind of, we need to coordinate with all department, transportation department, and also those development of road and cost efficiency, all kinds of issues we need to consider about. Transportation, public transportation is important. For those employees, and I had worked in Silver Spring. I took some commuter bus. I think that's very convenient. And
I think that's a great question. That's actually one for my platform. We definitely really improve our infrastructure. The public transportation, they're twofold. One fold is about the highways. We need a better highway system. I think everybody come to Maryland. I've been in Maryland for 20 years. 495 has not seen a major renovation or changes. That's a concern. For people who want to find a different job in Northern Virginia, the traffic is terrible. I didn't think about any job in Northern Virginia. Even they're paying better and there are more opportunity there, right? I think 29 is a concern. People commuting between DC and Howard County is a huge concern. They need to remove a lot of traffic lights, make it more accessible. 70 and 270 and 695, 95, or major highways need some improvement, some changes. But the data scientists, I definitely will work with other people to find a solution how to improve the highway. Other public transit are really about a train. We need to do something as well to really provide accessibility for people who are looking for other jobs.
public transit is so difficult in more rural areas. You really do need a certain density of population to make it cost effective. And even then, they often have all sorts of financial problems. Direct response buses rather than fixed route is one suggestion. Another thing I would love to see in the rural part, in our district, the rural part of our district specifically, is non-emergency medical transportation. I think that's something that is very badly needed, particularly for seniors. But I would like to try and make sure that we are putting housing in places where we can start genuinely building a public transit system, because we absolutely do need that.
When I first became Deputy Secretary of Transportation, I gave a lot of speeches, and I used to start my speeches by saying, first thing the Secretary and I did when we got there was to get the keys, go down into the basement, unlock the door, and let the State Highway Department out. This issue of transit and roads has been a politically divided right down the middle, and it still is to this day. Transit works some places, but it's almost always requiring subsidy. It's a nice idea, but both of our opponents are right. We do need to just do more roads. In fact, we did the Intercounty Connector while I was in office with Governor Ehrlich. So my friends in the House of Delegates push transit. Governor Hogan is trying to expand 270. That's probably going to end unless a Republican wins the governorship again.
Okay, great. Next question. Can you describe your position in women's reproductive rights and particularly women's rights to have abortion?
I definitely support women's rights for abortion. I think that's the inherent right for women, and men should not dedicate women's health choices.
Yeah, I am also 100% in favor of women's right to choose and full reproductive health care. I don't think the government belongs in our bedrooms, in our doctor's offices, in our private lives.
I'm a libertarian Republican, which means sometimes my positions disagree with the more conservative element. I had been a pro-choice candidate and political office holder for most of my life. However, I will tell you this, the bills that they are passing in Annapolis, I am 120% against. They are making abortions not just allowable, but they are encouraging people to get abortions. They are requiring the state to pay for it, and they are allowing abortions up to 9 weeks, which is something that we have tried to pass a law saying it shouldn't happen. Most rational people believe that that's not a good idea, but against the supermajority, we have not been able to do that.
Okay, I'm a Christian. I'm pro-life. I believe every life is given by God. I respect mother's rights. Maryland's current abortion law is consistent with Roe v. Wade. I do not intend to change the current state law which exists in 30 years. Also, however, from the perspective of women's reproductive health, as many referred, I would like to remind everyone abortion in general. While we assert women's rights in regard to abortion, every woman should also have the right to be well informed that the risk, danger, and possible injury done to her own body caused by such an abortion procedure. Only by doing so are the women's rights fully upheld and protected. We also need to improve our education to educate don't encourage minor sexual activity and avoid unnecessary pregnancy and unnecessary abortion. Thank you.
Okay. The next question, if elected, will you make change to Maryland voting laws and regulations?
Well, as they stand, I think Maryland is in pretty decent shape as far as voting rights are concerned. I am very, very nervous about the states in which Senate candidates and gubernatorial candidates have said that they would not necessarily accept the results of an election. I'm very concerned about the states that have taken serious steps to make voting more difficult. I really do believe that every citizen has not only the right but the responsibility to exercise their right to vote. And the more involved and informed we are, although it's messy, democracy remains, as some wags said, it's the worst system in the world except for every other system.
Yeah, I just cannot wrap my head around the argument by my opponents on the other side of the aisle that we're taking steps to curtail the right to vote. All I have seen are bills to expand the time that people have to vote. There are 8 days of all-day voting, there's absentee ballots, and there's voting day, which I understand. I was enthusiastic about creating more opportunity because people who work on Tuesdays, that was limiting, but I challenge anyone to produce one human being in this state or anywhere else who cannot vote because we haven't done enough. In fact, after the absentee ballots became so valuable, the early voting dropped off dramatically, and I would like to see us cut that back because of the expense.
Of course, democracy cannot function well without broader voter participating, voter integrity, and transparency. And the voter accessibility and the voting integrity do not have to contradict with each other. In fact, they can should complement each other to ensure a well-functioning democracy. I don't think everything is perfect. I think we need to, definitely there is we need improvement. We should encourage voter registration and also ensure transparency. And through election judges and polling observers. And so we should encourage people register as election judges and polling observers to let all voters have confidence in our voting system. Thank you.
I have no problem with our voting participation. I think my real concerns are we able to trust our results and then accept the election result? Because we have candidates still think probably we're in 2018, right? That's the problem. If our system, we have 80%, 60% people voting, and the result is out, are we able to accept either we're winning or losing based on the counting? I think that's the concern we're having. What we're seeing the whole country, are we able to accept the election result? And I think that's my concern. I'm not concerned we don't have a way to vote, or it's too difficult to vote. I think Maryland will have a very good participation. That's my concern. Are we able to accept the election result?
We're done, right? Yeah. Okay. We can take one more question. Will you support legislation to promote sustainable energy services, especially solar and wind power, in public transport?
Would be brought forth that would expand it more than we have already. And there is no doubt that the environment, we used to be conservationist when I was going through school, and the environment is critical. But I really have a problem with the people who want to totally, immediately, and now get rid of fossil fuels when we do not have the infrastructure to produce sufficient solar or wind power. And they won't champion nuclear, which is the only way we ever could get green energy and get rid of fossil fuels. So in Europe right now, they're running into problems. In California, they're running into problems. They do not have enough energy being produced to allow people to run their washing machines and all the other things that we need it for so badly. So,
Yes, we also always discuss about the environment and the climate changes and also all those kind of issues. Yes, we should invest in clean energy and reduce carbon emission to combat climate change. We have to do this for the future of our children. However, we also must balance new energy initiative with ensure energy independence upon national security and economic development. And also for solar energy and all kinds of new energy. I heard that we should support new energy, but we also need to consider those solar panel, the pollution of the solar panel. Yeah, that's the big concern.
I definitely support the solar energy and the wind energy and the many new renewable energy. I think that should be part of our hybrid plan for really to combat the climate change. The other part of it, I would say we need nuclear energy because that's part of really, it's part of a discussion we should have that because a lot of people, nuclear energy is kind of very mysterious. People have that hidden fear because they don't see it. They have that kind of unintended consequences. Because I can see it, I just feel really the fear that, and definitely nuclear energy is a little, have some high risks sometimes, right? I think the other point is we need to research, do some, in some other perspective, like fusion energy. We need to put more money for our future. Maybe in 20, 30 years, what we're discussing right now is not a big problem at all if we're able to have working fusion energy, right? That will really address a lot of concerns we're having now. And that will totally change the landscape of the whole world, both politically and societally. Thank you.
So yes, I think the original question was probably about supporting the government purchasing electric vehicles and buses instead of it. Was that the intention? I would certainly support that. And yes, it is a critical problem. I share everybody's concern about how we get there. You know, with everything electric, you have to produce that electricity. And we aren't going to be able to instantly do that with just wind and solar. And I think we do need to be much more conscious of making a transition plan. But we're absolutely out of time. It's something that we need to do with extreme urgency.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions, and now we go to close statement. We start with Dr. Zhen. That's 1 minute, by the way.
Thank you. Thanks for COPA and FEI hosting this event, and for Asian community as we grow and become a stronger force of input on community matter. We need to educate ourselves about how to participate in local politics through an accountable and transparent process. In the democratic system of government, we need to understand that it is okay to have different opinions and voices. We must value freedom of choice and bring ourselves to be a foundation of stone of a better community. As a first-generation immigrant, I'm honored to be the first Asian American Republican woman nominee in Maryland, running for Maryland State House of Delegates. I'm running to restore our community, restore balanced governance, restore excellence in education, restore, improve public safety, and to help and support small businesses and promote reduce tax support, retire senators, also protect our farmland. Thank you. Please support us. Thank you.
I want to thank COPA and the FEL for your hosting this event. Thank everybody for coming here to listen to us. Maybe you heard that again. And my name is Chao. I've been serving Howard County for almost 4 years on school board. I made a difficult decision on school board, but I got the problem solved. I'll be able to work across the aisle with everybody, with our stakeholders, to find a solution. Maybe sometimes it's not the best solution, but that's the solution we have. And I was able to really deliver I think that's something important. And I will continue to work for you and serve you and represent Howard County and Montgomery County in the state level. I want to make that difference. And with a data scientist and with 2 children in our public school system, we definitely want to have a better public education, better transportation, and manage our APFO better to really support our public infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for listening. I hope we haven't bored you to death. It's been a long session. So I consider myself a moderate Democrat. I try to take a practical rather than an ideological approach to problems. I really do think we've gotten locked into some partisan thinking, and we have problems that require extreme creativity and the ability to look with fresh eyes at what's ahead of us. I would like to focus on breaking down some of the political polarization we're experiencing and see how we can work together to preserve the things we love about our community and to expand opportunity where that's possible. So I see a very, very bright future for Maryland, but I think it's going to take some proactive and creative problem solving to get there. And I am anxious to do that work if you would be willing to send me to Minneapolis. Thank you.
Thank you. I have very much enjoyed being here and talking with everybody, and I have to say, what an absolute joy this election has been for me. I'm not necessarily one who likes campaigning that much, but having a running mate like Jenny has made everything just that much more fun. She's dynamic. She's educating me about Asian community, and we're working as a team. She and Reed Novotny and I are working hard to win and to be able to represent you. Second, I do want you to know I have 6 children. I have 6 grandchildren in the Howard County school system, so I can keep an eye on it that way. And finally, the question that I asked and have never gotten an answer is this. All of my Democrat friends are very, very high on equity. Things need to be fair and equal and equity. How do they justify that people who have higher incomes have the complete freedom to take their kids out of a failing school and put them anywhere else, whereas people with low income, when they're stuck in some of the 13 very failing schools in the city, do not? And I never get an answer.
Okay, that concludes our candidate forum. First, let's give a big round of applause to our guests and audience. All right. On behalf of CAPRA and the Family of Education Improvement, we thank all the guests and all the participants, audience for your time, and hope you enjoy the rest of the weekend. Thank you.